Can everybody hear me? Can everybody see me? I've been having a connection problem. Yes, indeed, is the response. So I'm assuming visible and audible. Oh, joy. Oh, bliss. I'm visible and audible. So welcome to everybody. And hello to those who said hello that I didn't catch because I wasn't visible or audible, but I am now. Hello, James, and Linda, and Judy, and Anne. Chilly Squirrel Hill. It is a bit fresh today, isn't it? Yeah. Hello, Grace. Grace is in Ireland. And Mark in Rochester. You're a regular, Mark, and it's good that you're back. And so we have Chilly Squirrel Hill and Robert from Fort Lauderdale, which I assume is considerably warmer. And I hope not wet. So we have a slightly different setup today, which is why I have to keep checking my telephone. So if it makes noises, please forgive me. But as we know, all of this technology is wondrous and amazing, and sometimes not as reliable as we might wish. So forgive us if we have to do some odd things today, but it's a big one today and rather complex, as you will see. From Marlene, absolutely. If you can see what she's written in the chat list, you'll probably agree with me. So, Joke from Haarlem in the Netherlands, hello and welcome to you. Another one of our very regulars. And there's Mary in North Carolina, also in the warm belt. Absolutely right, Linda. I'm glad you've read the play. Hello, Shelley from Mount Lebanon, as usual. Another regular. Welcome back. It's good to see all these people who are regulars, who are tuning in every week, and we really, really do appreciate it. Don't assume that we don't. We're very appreciative of all of those of you who are so regular and stick with us every week, and we will try to maintain the variety for you every week. And for those of you who are new to us, welcome. And I think, Linda, every Irish mother who had studied any Shakespeare would use that particular quote when admonishing their children. And there were a few other things, but I won't repeat them on air because they're sacrilegious and very rude. But Sarah in Scott Township, hello. Yes, it has cooled, isn't it? It's actually lovely out there now. We've got bright sunny days and very low humidity, if any, and cool and fresh. It's the fall. The fall is upon us. If I'm looking strangely at the screen, it's because I'm checking the chat to see who's joining us. And welcome to everybody. If I don't give everybody's name, you can all read them anyway. But as I say, I'm delighted that you're all here with us. We're going to start fairly promptly today because we have a lot to get through, and I want time to answer questions at the end if we possibly can. So lots of people tuning in. We have a very large hello, Dennis from Greensburg, another of our absolute regulars, bless you. And I have a few bits of information to give you as well, so we'll start fairly promptly. About another minute, and then I'll start. People always join slightly late, but of course, as you know, you can always watch it again online from our website. These webinars are always there, always available. So if you miss anything, or if you miss one, You can just check it out. Usually after we finish any particular webinar, about 12 hours later, you'll find it on the webinar, and it will always be there. So you can use it as legitimate evidence against me at any time. And as usual, I make the same principled statement that everything I tell you may be wrong. Everything I tell you is my feelings, my opinions, and what I think about these particular plays or these particular writers. So if you completely disagree with me, feel free to say so. And if you completely disagree with me, you can always do your own webinar as well, and I'll watch it. Anyway, we're getting very close now. I think I'm going to make a start. It's just gone 2 o'clock. So first of all, this is the first of a set of 3 webinars we're going to do on the play. Here we go, messages coming in. And as I say, forgive me for this, but I have to do this. Yeah, I got that. Normally we operate all in the same building, but at the moment, my associate Catherine is having to operate somewhere else, and she runs these things. So that's why we're a little bit off today. However, I think everything will go smoothly. Cross fingers, knock on wood, pray for the luck of the Irish. As I say, this is the first of 3 webinars on the topic of King Lear. Now, to my mind, I do believe, and it's a close run thing, that King Lear is possibly the greatest play ever written. Not merely for its story, but for its structure and its concept and its teaching, if you like. And if anybody wants to know, I think the close run second greatest play ever written, obviously, is Beckett's Waiting for Godot, closely followed by Beckett's second major opus, Endgame. However, Lear to me is an almost perfect play. And many people think it's an impossible play, but it's not. It's just enormous. And so what I want to do is break it into 3 parts to discuss what I consider to be some of the fundamentals of the play. So I've called this first part, Nothing Will Come of Nothing. Because in attempting to establish any sort of precise concept for the production of any play, the actor and the director must search out particular images, series of images that he or she can follow through the play to demonstrate what they consider to be the playwright's theme and their own theme in the performing of it. And there are many repeated images in King Lear. But the one I want to follow for the purpose of this set of discussions is that of the journey. Lear is a play of journeys. It's an image constantly repeated for each of the major characters, and it uses that concept in many ways to allow the characters and the plot to be seen to develop. How the plot develops, how the characters develop, they develop through the mechanism of the journey. And there are many kinds of journey referred to in the text. There are the physical journeys, the emotional journeys, the intellectual journeys, and even, believe it or not, the journey of Goneril's letter to Edmund. This particular letter, which is a very vital piece of information and could change the entire course of the story, has its own journey as well. I'll be talking about that in program 3. Primarily, Lear, all of his allies, all of his protagonists are all on a journey, and the journey is one of self-discovery. Now, blindness is another often repeated image in the play, and each of the major characters also suffers from a form of blindness. It's physical, emotional, or intellectual, and each of them must undertake the journey. So I must turn that volume down on the music. It was rather sweet, but it's getting in the way. Each of the characters has to undertake a journey in order to gain or regain their sight. In other words, to find themselves, to see themselves, their true selves, their true nature. At the start of the play, Gloucester's son, Edgar, does not see his true value, or his brother's true nature, or the true horror of life in a world filled with chaos. And his journey will bring him comfortable certainty, I beg your pardon, to a point where he actually despairs of life itself. Edmund, Regan, Goneril, you might describe as the baddies of the play, will come to realize their own true potential, And their journeys will lead to utterly disastrous consequences for just about everybody they come into contact with. Gloucester, at the start of the play, is blind to the true nature of those most close to him. And he actually has to lose his eyes in order to gain true insight. So you see the way that structure sort of follows through for each of those characters. But for Lear himself, the journey is even more arduous and more destructive. He has to travel from total self-delusion to total self-awareness. And it will be a journey through a kind of personal purgatory, which will cost him his kingdom, his friends, his daughters, his sanity, and eventually his life. So as you can see, he's got quite a journey to go on. Fundamentally, he must learn to answer his own question. And that question, who is it that can tell me who I am? And that's basically, as I say, about the gaining insight, the insight to teach you what your true nature is, who you truly are. At the start of the play, King Lear is, in truth, king, the monarch, absolute, all-powerful. He's the center of his own world, a god king, if you like. His word is law. All must bow to his judgment. He believes that he is all-seeing, all-knowing, all-powerful, but in truth, this is a completely subjective view, dare I say, narcissistic view. He has no true perspective of himself. He only sees what he wants to see, himself as king, with absolute authority, but without taking any responsibility. The play begins very fast. Shakespeare starts the play very fast. There's no long and tedious introduction. It's just a conversation between two lords, and the king is on. And very significantly, his first line is an order, first speech. Attend the lords of France and Burgundy, Gloucester. Meantime, we, royal we, shall express our darker purpose. Give me the map there. Same again. Give me the map. Snapping orders. Know that we have divided in three our kingdom. We have, me, the king, have divided. And 'tis our fast intent to shake all cares and business from our age, conferring them on younger strengths, while we, unburdened, crawl towards death. In this opening speech, Lear attempts to do three completely impossible things. First, to divest himself of power while still retaining authority. Secondly, to dictate, control, and plan for a future in which he will have no part to play. Pretty much every despot in the world, in fact, pretty much anybody who has left a will, tries to do that. And finally, and possibly most foolishly, and that's a very important word, to bargain with power, land, and authority against declarations of love. He first offers his daughters tremendous wealth, tremendous authority, tremendous power, and all they have to do is tell him that they love him. It is the most narcissistic, vain, and appalling way to disperse power, by saying, tell me you love me. Listen to what he says. Tell me, my daughters, since now we will divest us both of rule, interest of charity, cares of state, which of you shall we say doth love us most, that we with largest bounty may extend where nature doth with merit challenge. In other words, the one who tells me they love me the most gets the most. It's a terrible bargain and a terrible distribution of power. His first and second born daughters are most political in their responses. Listen for what we hear from Goneril.
Sir, I love you more than word can wield the matter. Dearer than eyesight, space, and liberty. Beyond what can be valued, rich or rare. No less than life, with grace, health, beauty, honor, as much as child e'er loved or father found. A love that makes breath poor and speech unable. Beyond all manner of so much I love you.
Not to be outdone, Her sister Regan responds.
I am made of that same metal as my sister, and prize me at her worth. In my true heart I find she names my very deed of love. Only she comes too short. That I
Well, we seem to have lost the image there, and I'm sorry about that. We're not seeing or hearing the video, so I'm going to I'm just checking out whether we've got anything there, and if we haven't, I apologize, and I'll just carry on just with me. Video error. Right, okay. So we'll listen first of all to what Goneril says, and I will attempt to deliver a Goneril. You got me back, that's the important thing, right? As long as I'm here. So Goneril's response to that question: Sir, I love you more than word can wield the matter, dearer than eyesight, space, and liberty, beyond what can be valued, rich or rare, no less than life with grace, health, beauty, honor, as much as child e'er loved or father found a love that makes breath poor and speech unable, beyond all manner of so much, I love you. My goodness me, wouldn't you be loved to be loved by a daughter like that? Not to be outdone, Regan, her sister, responds, and Regan is always the slightly more devious of the two. Her response: I am made of that self-metal as my sister, and prize me at her worth. In my true heart I find she names my very deed of love. So in other words, I love her just as much as she, I love you much as she does, but she goes one sly move further. Only she comes too short. That I profess myself an enemy to all other joys which the most precious square of sense professes, and find I am alone felicited in your dear highness love. Oh, so sly. Now Lear only wants to hear praise. He wants praise of himself, confirmation of his own belief in himself, confirmation of his authority. Nothing less will do. It is, as I suggested, completely narcissistic. And the problem with narcissism is that it needs to be encouraged and confirmed all the time. The person who most doubts themselves is the person who has most false belief in themselves. So he's constantly seeking this approval rating, if you like. But he rewards his daughters with complete control over his kingdom, or at least a third each. Goneril and Regan each get a third, but he has a third daughter. And that's Cordelia, the youngest child. And from her, he expects much more in terms of love and adoration. Even his first, and I don't know if our videos are working yet, but I think they maybe, we're going to give it a try. Anyway, his very first words to Cordelia show a deeper affection and a greater expectation. Let's see if we have this. No, still having a problem. So I'm going to read two rolls. So Lear turns to his youngest daughter. Now our joy, although our last and least, to whose young love the vines of France and milk of Burgundy strive to be interest, what can you draw to say a third more opulent, than your sisters? Speak. To which he replies the most fateful line: Nothing, my lord. Nothing? Nothing. Nothing will come of nothing. Speak again. Her reply is so honest. Unhappy that I am, I cannot heave my heart into my mouth. I love your majesty according to my bond, no more, no less. Lear does not like this. How, Cordelia? Mend your speech a little, lest you may mar your fortunes. If you don't say the right thing, you lose. And again, her honesty is absolute. Good my lord, you have begot me, bred me, loved me. I return those duties right back as a right fit, obey you, love you, and most honor you. Then the question: why have my sisters husbands, if they say they love you all? Haply when I shall wed, that lord whose hand must take my plight, shall carry half my love with him, half my care and duty. Sure, I shall never marry like my sisters, to love my father all. Lear does not like this. But goes thy heart with this? Ay, my good lord, so young and so untender. Look at that complete misreading of his daughter. Misreading. She does not say what he wants to hear. Therefore, what she says is completely beyond the pale. He only wants to hear praise. So young and so untender. So young, my lord, and true. And then the curse. Let it be so. Thy truth then be thy dower. And now he completely loses reason. For by the sacred radiance of the sun, the mysteries of Hecate and the night, by all the operation of the orbs by which we do exist and cease to be, here I disclaim all my paternal care, propinquity, and property of blood, and as a stranger to my heart and me, hold thee for this forever. Absolute. To cut her off completely, not merely cut her off from inheritance, but cut her off from family, cut her off from his bloodline, to say it is the classic, you were never born. You do not exist. It's so utterly unreasonable, but it is based upon his absolute need for self-assurance. Cordelia sees Lear with honest eyes. Lear sees only a king. It is the only way he can understand himself. He believes because he is a king, because he wears a crown, he is above the law. He's above all control, that he has indeed the right to bestow and remove love, benefit, and even life itself. And in this case, identity. We should also note within this scene the constant repetition of the word nothing. It will become for Lear the most pertinent word he will in the play, because it is precisely what Lear must become before he can truly know himself. And the fool sees that. He arrives quite late in the play and disappears by the end of the third act. But he serves a very precise and positive purpose. He is all licensed. He alone can tell the truth to Lear. It was the function very often of the what you might say, the court jester would be all licensed, was allowed to say anything. It was part of that job. He was the Saturday Night Live of the regal period. So the fool, and particularly in this sense, the fool is the voice of wisdom, not necessarily knowledge, but wisdom. So in this particular piece, in this particular play, the fool is that voice, in the little voice in the ear, rather like the Roman emperors had, you are only a man, you are only a man. So he must tell the truth to Lear, the truth that Lear cannot or will not see for himself. The fool understands that Lear must prepare Lear for the reality that awaits him, which is the reality of no longer being a king, the reality of being only a man. He must show Lear the reality of being his own fool, that he was a fool to divide the kingdom, a fool to lose Cordelia, a fool to believe in his power, a fool to believe that one daughter would behave any better than the other. I'm going to keep reading. We have some recordings, they're not working, so I'm going to keep reading. Fool says, you'll see thy other daughter shall use thee kindly, for though she is as like this, as a crab's like an apple, yet I can tell what I can tell. And what can you tell, boy? She will taste as like this as a crab does to a crab. The word kindly in this sense is used as in kind or in like fashion. A crab apple may look like a sweet apple, but it still tastes like a crab apple. Something that Lear simply cannot understand. Lear has to lose his wits and has to sink into madness before he can truly see the truth for himself. And he's a long journey to go before that happens. But until then, the fool must be Lear's eyes, his alter ego. And the fool must constantly and perpetually keep asking Lear's question, who is it that can tell me who I am? And the fool very wisely says, Lear's shadow. Lear I would learn that, for by the marks of sovereignty, knowledge, and reason, I should be false persuaded I had daughters. To which the fool informs him, of which they will make an obedient father. The fool understands that Lear's perception of himself is only a shadow, a false image. The man, rather than the king, has yet to emerge. Until then, Lear is nothing. By giving away power, he's reduced himself to nothing. The fool asks him, can you make no use of nothing, nuncle? The same question Lear asked Cordelia, nothing will come of nothing. To which Lear says, no, boy, nothing can be made out of nothing. To which the fool replies, prithee tell him so much the price of his land comes to, he'll not believe a fool. Do you know the difference, my boy? He refers to Lear as my boy, the same way Lear refers to him, the fool, between a bitter fool and a sweet one. The Lord that counselled thee to give away thy land, come place him here by me, do thou for him stand. The sweet and bitter fool, we're back to the crabapple reference there. The sweet and bitter fool will presently appear, the one in motley here, the other found out there. All thy other titles thou hast given away, that thou wast born with. The fool recognizes that Lear must become fool-like before he gains perception, before he gains understanding, before he gains wisdom. A little later on, when Lear is fighting with Goneril, Lear, how now, daughter, what makes that frontlet on? Methinks you're too much of late in the frown. Why are you always scowling at me? Why are you always looking angry? The fool responds, thou were a pretty fellow when there had no need to care for her frowning. Here's the key. Now thou art an O without a figure. I am better than thou art now. I am a fool. Thou art nothing. A little bit of science in there, by the way. In Latin mathematics, there was no such thing as zero. The idea of an O without a figure was actually quite a relatively modern but rather fascinating scientific reference in this. That's just a side note. But the whole point, Lear, the fool is telling Lear, you do not realize, you do not understand. You are nothing now. You are not the king. When you were the king, if she frowned, didn't matter. Now you're nothing. It matters. The fool is really accurate in calling Lear a fool, because it's only when Lear comes to think and talk like a fool, to perceive with a fool's insight, the fool's wisdom, can he really begin to understand himself. I mean, the fool, that lovely moment of, if thou wert my fool, I'd have thee beaten for being old before thy time. To which Lear says, how's that? What are you talking about? Thou shouldst not have been old before thou hadst been wise. And that is one of the great truisms. The one thing that age and experience and life can give you may not be knowledge, it may not be power, it may not be influence, it may not be wealth. But the one thing that we pray it gives us is wisdom. And so Shakespeare's point there and the fool's point there is quite absolute. Without wisdom, you are nothing. The growing reality of Lear's situation is actually beginning to disturb Lear. He fears it will turn his wits, that it will make him go mad. Lear is most afraid of madness. He's most afraid of, as we would say today, losing it. The fool, however, seems to understand that madness, in that sense, is the journey Lear must take. Only by going through that process that will Lear actually learn and understand. He also knows it's going to be inevitable. It will happen. You see, the fool understands human nature better than most. But that is the function of the fool. Wisdom is always the function of the fool. So Lear's journey now proceeds with a whole series of shocks that will reveal the truth of his position, his nothingness, if you wish. And that will propel him into madness. First comes Goneril. Now, we can view Goneril and Regan simply as archetypal wicked sisters, like something out of Cinderella. They are, in fact, far more complex than that. Goneril is only following her true nature. And that was the part of the journey, to discover one's true nature. She believes in herself, and that she is the victim has been the victim of a world dominated by weaker men, principally her father and her husband. If what she says of Lear and his knights staying in her castle is true, and we have no reason to suppose it isn't, then her request to reduce this large train of followers that was part of the bargain, that he could reserve 100 knights and squires, that he would travel between his daughters' homes, because he now split the country 50-50 between them. Cordelia was out. So the deal is, I've got 100 knights, I've got their attendants, and they are my train, and I am still the king, and they come with me wherever I go. Can you imagine, no matter how big your castle is, having 100 knights and squires turning up there every 6 months and hunting and shooting and gaming and playing cards and drinking and eating and all of that kind of thing? Goneril explains her dilemma to him very clearly, and I think quite reasonably. Here you do keep 100 knights and squires, men so disordered, so debauched and bold, that this court, my house, infected with their manners, shows like a riotous inn. Epicurism and lust, greed and sex, makes it more like a tavern or a brothel than a graced palace. The shame itself does speak of instant remedy, therefore be desired by her that else will take the thing she begs, a little to disquantity your train, and the remainders that shall still depend to be such men as may besort your age, which know themselves as and you. In other words, can we have less of them, and can they be a little bit older, because he surrounded himself, like many old men do, with young men, so that he can still feel virile. Lear's response to her is infinitely more unreasonable and far crueler. Really cruel. Remember what he said to Cordelia. Now what he says to Goneril. Here, nature, here, dear goddess, here. Suspend thy purpose if thou didst intend to make this creature fruitful. Into her womb convey sterility, dry up in her the organs of increase, and from her derogate body never spring a babe to honor her. If she must teen, create her child of spleen, that it may be a thwart disnatured torment to her. Let it stamp wrinkles in her brow of youth, with cadent tears fret channels in her cheeks, turn all her mother's pains and benefits to laughter and contempt, that she may feel how sharper than a serpent's tooth it is to have a thankless child. That is a pretty dreadful thing to say to your daughter, no matter what she said to you, to actually beg the gods to turn her womb sour. Lear has no control over his own passions and over his own need to be the king. It's worth noting that Goneril does not throw him out. He chooses to leave because of his pride, his arrogance. In one sense, in major sense, they're both really playing their parts. They have no choice. They're both following their nature. She is discovering hers, and he is so ingrained with his nature of being king, his pride will not let him step back from it. In fact, even at the very start of the play, Goneril and Regan had very little regard. Before the great meeting of who do you love, which of you loves me most, Regan said of him, "'Tis the infirmity of his age. He hath yet ever but slenderly known himself," and that is extremely true. He does not know himself. Regan now begins to show her true nature. She won't even let Lear visit her home. She actually leaves the castle with her husband Cornwall and goes to Gloucester's castle so that Lear never gets into her house with his retinue. She joins forces with her sister to reduce her father's train of followers even more. So far, Goneril has offered 50. "If you will come to me," she says, "for now I spy a danger, I entreat you to bring no more than 25. To no more will I give place or notice." To which Lear responds, quite rightly, "I gave you all." "And in good time you gave it," says Regan. "Made you my guardians, my depositaries, but kept, kept a reservation to be followed by such a number. What, must I come to you with 25, Regan? Said you so? I mean, that was the deal, 100. Regan says, I speak it again, my lord, no more with me. Goneril, more political than Regan. Hear me, my lord, what need you 25, 10, or 5 to follow in a house where twice so many have a command to tend you? That's a very reasonable point. Why do you need all these people? You come to stay with us. We've castles full of knights and attendants and cooks and serving wenches and all the rest of it. Why do you need all these people? Because that's what gives Lear his identity. Regan goes one step further. What need one? Regan always goes that one step further. She forces Lear down to the true level of what he has become. A lonely, weak, despised old man. And her final suggestion hammers that home. What need one? It may be the cruelest question in the play. To Lear, in his mind, he only exists as a king. He is Lear because of what he had, of what he possessed, of what he needs. Goneril and Regan see him just as a foolish old man who's past his time. And they're quite prophetic. Lear will actually eventually say it of himself to Cordelia, but not yet. His journey is still just beginning. For now, he still thinks that being Lear means being king. But that's not much good if nobody else thinks it. It's at this moment that Lear makes one of the most heart-rending pleas in all of drama, I think, down the ages. One of the things that make this one of the greatest plays ever written, because it is a wonderful understanding of misconception. It comes out of Lear's complete misconception of himself, and a new word comes into his vocabulary. I just mentioned it. That word is need. At this moment, he believes that he needs more than he does, that to be Lear, he needs his horses, his knights, his pomp, his splendor. So this is a plea based completely on his own view of who and what Lear is. But it ends with a realization that the world, that nature, that family, that everything, the gods themselves, are all against him. Oh, reason not the need. Our basest beggars are in the poorest thing superfluous. Allow not nature more than nature needs. Man's life is cheap as beasts. In other words, if you don't give us more than what a base beast has, then we are just a base beast. Turns to Regan. Thou art a lady. If only to go warm were gorgeous. Why nature needs not what thou, gorgeous, wears, which scarcely keeps thee warm. The way she dresses, she doesn't wear much. But for true need, you heavens, give me that patience I need. And then, this is where it starts to get deeply significant. You see me here, you gods, a poor old man as full of grief as age, wretched in both. First time he's admitted that, those 3 words, poor old man. Never said it before. And there is the first recognition of himself as he is. It's not quite all the way there yet, but he's beginning. He goes on. If it be you, the gods, that stir these daughters' hearts against their father, fool me not so much to bear it tamely. Touch me with noble anger. Let not women's weapons, water drops, stain my man's cheeks. In other words, don't let me have a human reaction. Let me be a king still. And then the curse. No, you unnatural hags. Unnatural in that sense, bastard. I will have such revenges on you both that all the world shall... And he can't think of anything. I will do such things... Still can't get anything. What they are yet I know not, but they shall be the terrors of the earth. You think I'll weep? I'll not weep. I have full cause for weeping. Oh, you dreadful people. But this heart shall break into 100,000 flaws, or ere I'll weep. Oh, fool, I shall go mad. Still, even in this extreme moment, still saying, I'm too strong. I am king. I'm not going to break. But they're empty threats. that he can't even explain or describe. He has nothing. He can rant and rail as he did when he was indeed a king, when his words did bring fear and obedience, but now he's just a foolish old man, and only he fails to see that. His daughter's response is very harsh, to say the least. Goneril says of him, when he walks away, "'Tis his own blame. He'd put himself from rest and needs must taste his folly." He's got to understand what he is. He's got to learn his lesson. She's like a rather strict school mom at that point. She wants him to suffer, to understand exactly what he is. Nothing. So now, rejected by his own daughters, out onto the heath he goes. He's not fully broken yet. He's still fighting himself. He's commanding the elements and ordering the storm to punish him, as if the storm cared. "Blow, winds, and crack your cheeks. Rage, blow, you cataracts and hurricanos. Spout till you have drenched the steeples, drowned the tops, and thou, all shaking thunder, strike flat the thick rotundity." It's a wonderful speech. Every actor who's ever played Lear both loves and dreads that speech, because you are trying to do the impossible. You are trying to instruct nature to obey you. Doesn't work. He calls the wind and rain and thunder servile ministers. "You work for me." No, they don't. They don't care. The elements pay no heed to him. They just relentlessly pursue him. He has no power, no authority out here. Out on the heath, there is no king. Just an old man and a fool who need nothing more than a hovel to shelter in. Now, resolution seems to dawn on him. Slowly, it's starting. Suddenly he goes, hang on a minute. The realization that dawns is that he has failed as a king, that there was something missing in his kingship, and maybe that's what the problem was. But he's not just failed as a king, he's failed as a human being. He's failed to show humanity, that anytime anything went against him, he would curse it, he would condemn it, he would remove it. But now that he, Lear, is experiencing actual suffering, he begins to understand what suffering actually is, what it is to be and to have nothing. He tries to pray. "Poor naked wretches, wheresoe'er you are, that bide the pelting of this pitiless storm, how shall your houseless heads and unfed sides, your looped and windowed raggedness defend you from seasons such as these?" And then the most telling line, "Oh, I have ta'en too little care of this." It's this realization, perhaps, that finally tips him into the madness that he needs to experience. Now he feels pity. Now he wants to help, to be a true king, but without the ability to do so. If you like a somewhat more modern allusion to that, in Dickens' Christmas Carol, that's exactly what Marley's ghost is talking about. That when it's too late, you realize all the things you should have done, but it's too late. He's finally begun to realize the humanity in himself, that he is just like everybody else, just a man. And the shock of that realization is overwhelming. At this moment, Shakespeare shows him exactly what just a man is in its lowest form. He produces, for Lear, a mad, naked beggar, which is Mad Tom. When Lear sees this, again, this wonderful, wonderful piece of writing, is man no more than this? Consider him well. Thou owest the worm no silk, the beast no hide, the sheep no wool, you're naked. The cat no perfume, you stink. There's three ons are sophisticated. And this is it. Thou art the thing itself. Unaccommodated man is no more but such a poor, bare, forked animal as thou art. If there were, and there is, a central moment in the play, the moment where everything turns, that's it. This is the moment. Thou art the thing itself, a poor, bare, forked animal. And it's only when he makes this momentous and for him horrifying discovery that a man is nothing more than a poor naked wretch, that he and Mad Tom are indeed the same thing, can Lear begin to see himself for what he truly is. The irony is, of course, because with Shakespeare there is always an irony, that nature sees for the first time the true nature of a man in the form of a mad beggar who is in actuality another man, a different man, hiding his true identity. So just as I say, the irony is that you see the truth of mankind in somebody who isn't actually the truth of mankind. It doesn't matter. It's the principle, it's the image that matters, and it's Lear's discovery that matters. Lear's mind has now cracked. One of the most pitiful scenes in the play, shortly after this, they find a hovel, they're inside, and Lear's mind has gone. And all he can think of is how badly he's been treated, how appallingly he's been treated. And he actually, in his imagination, in his deranged mind, puts his daughters on trial with only a fool and a madman to act as judges. Arraign her first, 'tis Goneril, he shouts. I here take my oath before this honourable assembly. She kicked the poor king, her father. How pathetic, how sad. Come hither, mistress, goes the fool, wanting to humour him. Is your name Goneril? She cannot deny it. Cry you mercy, I took you for a joint stool. Even the fool realizes this is a futile exercise, but he goes along with it. And there's another, he's referring to Regan, whose warped looks proclaim what store her heart is made of. Is there any cause in nature that makes these hard hearts? Kent, his loyal friend, begs him, just lie down, just rest. What he needs is sleep. He hasn't slept, he's soaking wet, he's been in the storm, his mind is going. And Kent, the loyal friend, we'll talk about Kent in future programs, begs him, just lie down, just go to sleep, rest yourself. Lear, still mad, make no noise, make no noise. Draw the curtains, so. We'll go to supper in the morning. And the fool, his last line, and I'll go to bed at noon. And I'll go to bed at noon. We'll have supper in the morning, and I'll go to bed at noon. The world has turned upside down. The king has now journeyed from the top to the bottom, from absolute power to absolute nothing. Because the world is upside down, chaos rules. I always believe, and I think I read this a long time ago, but I may not have, so it might be my thought. Civilization is humanity's way of putting order into the natural chaos of things. When you take away order, chaos will always ensue. If you don't believe that, try stop weeding your garden for a year. Try going without government for a year. Chaos will always ensue when order is taken away. But now the fool is gone. We don't need him anymore because from this point, Lear, the fool has achieved what he wanted. Lear has become his own fool. And in his madness, now he clearly sees with the fool's eyes. Remember what the fool said of him? Thou would make a good fool. And that's exactly what has happened. So, when the mad Lear meets the blind Gloucester, and again, we'll be looking at Gloucester's journey next week, Lear speaks with a clarity of vision that he could never have achieved before the storm, could never have achieved before he met the poor naked wretch, before he met Mad Tom, the forked animal. Now he begins to understand how the world works. He's beginning to gain, through his madness, a kind of wisdom. In fact, now he almost sounds like the fool. He's now playing at being a king in the way the fool might have played at being a king. He sees Gloucester blind, eyes gouged out. And he looks at Gloucester. Ah, Goneril with a white beard. They flattered me like a dog and told me I had white hairs in my beard ere the black ones were there. That's an interesting illusion. They told me I was old and wise before I was even young enough to grow a beard. He is the victim of the way we venerate authority, I suppose. Kings aren't made, we create them. Go to, they're not men of the words, he says. They told me I was everything. Oh, we do that. We do that. We praise where it's not worthy. They told me I was everything. It's a lie. I'm not ague-proof. In other words, I'm a victim of aging and illness just like everybody else. Gloucester. That trick of the voice I do remember well. Is it not the king? Notice Gloucester still refers to him as the king. Can't help it. To which Lear, in his foolishness, I, every inch a king. When I do stare, see how the subject quakes. I pardon that man's life. What was thy cause? Adultery? Ah, thou shalt not die. Die for adultery? No. The wren goes to it, and the small gilded fly doth lecher in my sight. Let copulation thrive. For Gloucester's bastard son was kinder to his father than my daughters got between the lawful sheets. To it luxury, pell-mell, for I lack soldiers. It's interesting there that this notion of bastardy, which again we're going to talk about in the third program, is quite important. What is a legitimate offspring? What is your legitimate child? What is the truth about that? And a usual result of lechery in those days would be bastard offspring, and nothing's much changed since then either. Gloucester, even in his blindness, still sees Lear as king. He can't help it. It's ingrained in him. But Lear is now, who does no longer sees himself as such, is now in full fool mode, if you like. It's as if he's facing how to put this, it's a kind of joyous experience for him to face the truth. He's actually enjoying it in the way the fool would. It has become almost a game to play. I mean, it's a wonderful moment when he first enters this scene, and he's probably got some stones or some leaves or something in his hand, and his line is, "They cannot touch me for coining, I am the king," and gives one of those stones or leaves to the Mad Tom Edmund character and says, "There's your pressman, there's your money. If I say that's money, because I'm the king. I can say what I like." It's the fool talking. Unlike Gloucester, Lear can now see everything with an infinitely clearer sight. Gloucester, thinking it's the king, immediately, "Let me kiss that hand." Lear, "Let me wipe it first. It smells of mortality." It's not the sacred hand of a king, it's the stinky hand of a man. Gloucester, "O ruined piece of nature, this great world shall so wear out to naught." This man is so depressed. "Dost thou not know me?" Lear, who knows him very well. "I remember thine eyes well enough. They're no longer there. Dost thou squinny at me? Oh, do thy worst, blind Cupid, I'll not love." Playing games. "Read thou this challenge, mark but the penning of it." Gloucester, "What? With the case of eyes, with only eye sockets, there's no eyes in them." Lear, "With wisdom." "What? Art mad? A man may see how the world goes with no eyes. Look with thine ears and see how that justice rails upon yon simple thief. Hark in thine ear, change places and handy-dandy, which is the justice, which is the thief. Thou hast seen a farmer's dog bark at a beggar. Yes, says Gloucester. And the creature, the beggar, run from the cur, the dog. There thou might behold the great image of authority. A dog's obeyed in office. Whoever we put on a throne, we'll obey them, because that's the choice we make in order to alleviate the chaos. We'll create our gods, we'll create our kings. A dog is obeyed if you make him a magistrate or a judge or a king. Then this great piece of wisdom, through tattered clothes, great vices do appear. Robes and furred gowns hide all. Plate sin with gold, and the strong lance of justice hurtless breaks. Arm it in rags, a pygmy's straw doth pierce it. He's begun, far more than begun, he's begun to realize that it was the trappings of power that made him a king, not his true nature. And that anybody with the trappings of power put on them can become, can behave, can be respected and regarded as a king. And for king, read president, prime minister, whatever the hell you like. We create these monsters. Get thee glass eyes, and like a scurvy politician, seem to see the things thou dost not. Oh, he has gained so much insight, so much understanding of what the true nature of man is. He's, with all the fooling put aside, he does appear to have discovered the nature of humanity and its suffering. It seems that he also has finally found true pity. This line, this speech, is I've often said about this. It's actually the other way around, but this is worthy of Beckett. In fact, Shakespeare must have read a lot of Beckett before he wrote this. If thou wilt weep my fortunes, take my eyes. I know thee well enough. Thy name is Gloucester. And this is the point. We must be patient. We came crying hither. You know, the first time that we smell the air, we wail and cry. When we are born, we cry that we are come to this great stage of fools. He has seen the futility, the appallingness, the emptiness, the waste that humanity imposes on itself. But fool-like, or not, some remnants of kingship still remain. Revenge is still on his broken mind. Still at the end of that scene, if it were a delicate stratagem to shoe a troop of horse with felt. And when I've stolen upon these sons-in-law, then kill, 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 kill. Still somewhere in the back of the mind, vengeance is festering. He'll lose it. So there we are, out on the heath, the madman and the blind man, who seem to be completely lost. But in the nick of time, like in all good melodrama, soldiers arrive. They are sent out by Cordelia to find her father. And they too still see him as king. But being now a fool, he uses that assumed authority to escape from them. It's very clever. Nothing matters to him now because he knows that now he has become nothing. If you are nothing, nothing matters. But he plays a game with them, and it's a fool's game. They want him to behave well, to be the king. So in order to get him to do that, they must play the fool's game. He behaves so he almost becomes an actor. I will die bravely when he sees the soldiers, like a smug bridegroom. I will be jovial. He made a joke. He wants them to laugh. Come, come, I am a king, masters. Know you that? To which they very foolishly reply, you are a royal one, and we obey, because that's what you do to a king. But the fool king responds, then there's life in it. Come, and you get it. You shall get it by running. And he runs away like a child. And that, with Lear having lost everything, discovered that nothing is what he is, and that through the process of losing his mind, he begins to discover himself and gain, at this point, a relative degree of insight into the true nature of what a man is. We'll leave him being chased by Cordelia's servants. And in the next program, we are going to look at Gloucester's journey. And then in program 3, we're going to look at the journey of various others and how Lear concludes his journey at the end of all by by the realization that there is no such thing as a happy ending, that at the end, chaos will always ensue. So that's today's program. I'm going to try and flick through any questions that are up there. Judy, you're quite right. 1,000 Acres is a wonderful retelling of the Lear story, and if you haven't read it, I heartily recommend it. It's a very, very good read. Why would he have been provoked to write King Lear at this particular time in his life? I think possibly at this particular point, I mean, I could go on about this forever, but I think it was, I suppose, a kind of, he was moving into that phase of his life when he was beginning to realize and understand how the process of life worked, what the process of life was. And he'd also discovered suffering in his own life, and he'd also discovered loss in his own life. But I think it was also a political statement as well, that it was Henry VIII who was the first king. Now, remember, Henry VIII was dead by the time Shakespeare was writing. I mean, he was writing in the reign of Elizabeth, but Henry VIII was the first of the English kings to insist on the term majesty. Henry VIII was greedy, fabulously wealthy, absolutely authoritative. You did not argue with him. I recommend a couple of very good reads. The biography of Thomas Cromwell by Dermot McCullough, and also Hilary Mantel's third book in the Cromwell series, The Mirror and the Light. You get a wonderful picture of what Henry VIII was. He was a person who believed he was a king, and that to be a king, he must have absolute authority, absolute control, and would turn on a dime if you said something that he disapproved of. So, excuse me, talking too much. Henry VIII is a perfect example of that somewhat naive and narcissistic view of self. And I think that Shakespeare's political mind probably was influenced somewhat by that. In fact, you could almost argue that King Lear is a wonderful play written by a man who is not a monarchist, but at least is arguing that we should not put our absolute faith in monarchy. So I think a lot of things must have been going through Mimi. I'm never argue with a lady. I wouldn't say it myself, but I'd never argue with a lady. Are there any other major questions there that, apart from connection troubles and no? It's all about videos and things. Yes, now there's Nancy. This is a point about Lear that's been said a few times, that it's an unactable play. Well, speaking as an actor who's, I've played it 3 times. I played it twice on stage and once on radio, and I've also directed it twice. So I will definitely disagree with your Yale Shakespeare Complete Works and what Charles Lamb said over a century ago. The problem is that when Charles Lamb said that, and it became a quite famous quote, it was over 100 years ago, and it was said in a period when, shall we say, melodramatic acting was all the fashion, and people tended to do somewhat grandiose interpretations of it. My first experience of the play was when I was still in my mid-teens, and I saw the Paul Scofield performance directed by Peter Brook, which became quite seminal for a particular generation. And in fact, Diana Rigg, who just died, she of Game of Thrones fame, was his Cordelia, and quite beautiful. I always remembered it. But Scofield and Brook brought Lear into the 20th century or the latter half of the 20th century, with a kind of minimalist purity that made it not only actable, but phenomenally clear in terms of what what was going on in that play. And Brooke was influenced by a book that I've been influenced by down the years. The Polish commentator Jan Kot, that's Jankott, wrote a book called Shakespeare, Our Contemporary. I think I might have mentioned it before. And if you can get hold of a copy of it, which you can, it's always in publication, he assesses many of the plays of Shakespeare, and his essay on Lear, which he calls King Lear or Endgame, after the other Beckett play I mentioned, has a great clarity of what is going on in this play. And a lot of things that I've said today have been deeply influenced by that production of Lear I saw in my mid-teens, and that book, which I've always had beside me. In fact, I had to keep buying it because people keep borrowing it from me and never giving it back. But I recommend reading that book. It is a difficult play, and it is a pure play. I'm going to talk about how the staging of it is important. Jan Kot talks about it. Peter Brook did it. I've always done it. There's an element about staging that I want to discuss next week, which demonstrates how pure and how minimalist this complex play is. Yes, the prodigal son. Yes, sort of. I'm not absolutely convinced that that's a good association, in that the prodigal son turns out to be nice, whereas in this particular play, the prodigal son turns out to be a complete bastard. Linda, PICT did Endgame a few years ago. There was a Beckett festival. It was before my time with the company. And they did an Endgame then. I do want to do it. It's another play I've acted in over the years. I have no interest in acting in it again. Not that I don't love it. I think it's an amazing play. But I would like to stage it again with some of our actors, and possibly over the next couple of years, we will get round to having another staging of Endgame. Beckett was hugely influenced again by Shakespeare, by the notion of Shakespeare. Ham in Endgame is very much a Lear, a person of absolute authority. Clove in Endgame is, in that sense, very much the fool, constantly telling Ham reality as opposed to fantasy. So there is an interesting association there. Anyway, there are no other major questions. If you do have questions, always remember, send us an email. We'll get back to you if you have a question. Yes, Linda, I was in the treaty. Yes, great two-parter, but nothing to do with this. So I just want to say again, I want to thank I want to say a thank you to the actors that we never got to see because we had problems with video. But Joe and Karen, will probably be seeing them next week, all things working properly. Thank you to the Theatre Authority, to Actors Equity, SAG-AFTRA, and AGMA. I want to say a particular thanks to Arnold de Carolis, who sponsored today's program. Arnold, thank you so much, and I hope you enjoyed it. If anybody wants to sponsor, we have a simple sponsorship here. It covers basically the costs of doing the production, doing the whole thing. And it's $250. So if anybody wants, we will recognize you. We will thank you from the bottom of our hearts. If you fancy sponsoring a particular program, we're going to be here forever. So please do consider it. If you can't afford a sponsorship, please do consider a donation. You can make a donation on the website, no matter how small, $10, $25, $50. Every donation matters in these rather terrible times for theatre. We cannot put plays on the stage. We cannot make an income through stage production. So please do consider sending us a donation. You'll find out how to do it on the website. Every donation truly matters. Thank you all. We will have a very interesting announcement coming up over the next week, I think, concerning other activities that we're going to be doing online. And we do hope that, yes, James, there's a second and a third part to this. The next 2 weeks, by the way, next week is going to be called When Madmen Lead the Blind, which is about Gloucester. And the third is going to be called The Wheel Has Come Full Circle, which is how everybody and the whole pattern of the play slowly comes together into a completion. So join us for the next 2 weeks and you can see that. As I say, big announcement coming up in the next few days, possibly about a week. And in the meantime, do take good care of yourselves. Do stay well. Do wear a mask and do wash your hands. Apart from that, thank you so much. Bye-bye.